$350 billion in so-called TARP money. Should Bank of America get some? And what strings should be attached? By most accounts, the restrictions about getting TARP money have changed. They've gotten more challenging. Let's ask Congressman Paul Hodes, a Democrat from New Hampshire, and Congressman Barrett, a Republican from South Carolina, both on the Financial Services Committee and part of the hearings on TARP. Gentlemen, thanks very much for being with us. Appreciate your taking the time. Now, I think the main thing here is, let's just start with Bank of America. The reports today obviously incredibly disturbing to the market, especially given the lack of clarity as to why money is needed right now. Congressman Hodes, should Bank of America get TARP money?
Well, before anybody gets any more money from the TARP program, I think it's absolutely critical that we have in place new transparency standards, new standards for reporting and accounting. The first $350 billion went out, and we don't know where it went. It went into the bank's coffers, but not much of it has trickled down so that Main Street sees anything from it.
Now, where can I just stop for a second? Where do you get that? Because everyone says that, but the banks have come out and shown that loans are up. In a normal recession, they would be down. So it seems that everyone says they're not making loans. The numbers show they are. Do you have facts that say otherwise?
Well, certainly, from what I'm hearing from my constituents as well as what I'm reading, credit is still extraordinarily tight. What we do know is that interbank lending has improved somewhat, but the effects still haven't been felt. Now, on the other hand, the good news for that first $350 billion is there haven't been as many bank failures as there might have been otherwise. But still, it's really important, in my view, that we have accounting, that we have strict transparency, and that's what we voted on today with the manager's amendment by Chairman Barney Frank.
Congressman Hodes, are you sure, and I just asked this so we can get more clarity from what you're hearing, that the reason people can't get loans, maybe lending standards have gone up and it's harder to get loans, that's true, but maybe that's because they should have gone up and people shouldn't have been getting those loans before. If that's why it's harder to get credit, do you really want to force those loans?
Well, what I do know is that the underwriting standards have risen smartly and risen beyond what I think is reasonable. What we have had, I think, is a pendulum swing. Before the collapse, there was no risk that was too great. And now, unfortunately, and it may be a combination of what the bank examiners are doing and the banks themselves are doing, there is no risk that seems to be available. I've heard from constituents with great credit who say that their banks are requiring a 50% loan-to-value ratio before they'll even consider them for a loan. So things are still very, very tight, and the liquidity that has gone to banks somehow has not translated for the man on the street, the person
I still don't understand where
you're
you're getting that. I want to ask Congressman Barrett a question, but Congressman Hodes first, can you give me a specific example of someone with good credit who has a job and can pay a loan back who got turned away from a major bank in this country for a loan?
I have a young lady who works for me as a constituent service representative. She has a young family, 2 incomes, steady incomes, tried to get a construction loan to add to her house. There's never been a problem with her credit. They required a 50% loan-to-value ratio before they would even consider it, and at that, she turned away at 3 different banks. So that's just one example of what I'm hearing from my constituents.
It's a fair example, but it seems to me it's very hard to both increase your underwriting standards and your loan volume at the same time. How do you do both those things? Congressman Barrett, do you also agree that Main Street isn't benefiting? And do you have constituents examples that you can give to defend that, if so?
Well, we do know that the first $350 billion, Aaron, we don't know exactly. Now, we do know that the banks used it to increase their balance sheet, to increase their liquidity, to buy other banks. But I think Paul's exactly right. I mean, I've got developers throughout South Carolina that are looking at projects, and to do a project, you got to have real estate. Well, they're not lending monies on real estate. So,
Congressman Barrett, would you give a loan to someone to invest in real estate right now?
Well, what we're trying to do is come out of this, and in certain cases, absolutely. I mean, everything is built on merit, and you've got to look at it at a case-by-case basis. What I'm concerned about, though, is if we do have questions about this first $350 billion, what's the rush? You know, we had an extraordinary time, and Congress took some extraordinary measures, and I think what we did, we stopped the bleeding. We went to the emergency room, we found out, you know, in triage exactly what was wrong, so we put a little Band-Aid on it, and now we're trying to reevaluate what happened to that first $350 billion, and all of a sudden, here comes another $350 billion. We're rushing to order, and I think let's just stop. Let's catch our breath. Let's think about the American taxpayer. We've stabilized for a little while, but before we step off this plank again, let's make sure we know exactly what's going on out
And
there.
Congressman Barrett and Congressman Hosmer, I think everyone understands the frustration of wanting to know and hear more from the banking CEOs. But again, it just seems that we have to be so careful about are they really not using the money for loans? I mean, we have headlines today out of the Philadelphia Fed. Few firms are having trouble getting credit. Every CEO I've spoken to that relies on bank loans says that they have had no problem getting credit. JP Morgan's Diamond today says loan demand is dropping dramatically. Is it possible that it's the demand side that's the problem, and we're so focused on saying that the banks are wasting our money that we might really be missing the forest for the trees?
Well, I'm not sure about the CEOs, you know, because the guys I'm talking to are the mom and pops, the small business owners, the realtors,
no, I'm talking about
the home builders.
mid-size. We're talking 500 million market cap and below.
Well,
that's small business America.
In South Carolina, it still is tight, and that's what we're trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's stop. Let's make sure that we're doing what we need to do with this first 350 before we open the gates, before we have mission creep. Because when we have mission creep, we have larger government, we have the AMT, we have Fannie and Freddie, and I don't think we want to go down that road again.
I guess it's a fair point, and I know I'm being tough on both of you, but it does seem that it's become common wisdom that there's hoarding, and literally you go through these numbers, you go through the facts, and it doesn't seem to be the case. Everyone I know that's tried to get a loan has been able to get a loan. It costs a little bit more and standards are higher, but aren't we in this problem because standards were too low? I don't know, but I appreciate you're both taking the time and being honest and giving us your point of view. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Aaron.
Next on Street Signs, under the radar, Obama trade stocks we have not heard